Good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you to today's webinar, and we're really excited today to have a couple of guest speakers with us. Number one for us is Gary Enhart from just the background of RECT and the RV space. You're going to learn a lot more about Gary. We're also excited to have our host with us today, Jeremy Johnson, who I'm going to introduce in a little bit. I know many of you have been to a lot of Lightspeed webinars, but just want to give you guys a quick reminder. Anytime throughout the webinar, if you've got questions and you're engaged in the conversation, you want to dig a little deeper, feel free to just type your question into the chat or to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to address those questions kind of throughout the discussion today, but we'll also save some time at the end of the webinar to address any questions we don't get to. So with that, I want to introduce today's host, Jeremy Johnson from Lightspeed. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, Diana, and thank you. I am super excited today. So quick little intro on me. I'm our Associate Director of Business Development. I primarily work with all of the RV and trailer manufacturers and OEMs trying to create more integrations and just better workflows between Lightspeed and their dealer portals or their dealer systems. I'm coming up just on about 4 years at Lightspeed, but I've been doing things in the recreational industry for over 25 years, with most of my career more in the website space with that. So a little bit about me, but kind of rolling into today. So we're just really thrilled and to welcome a true legend in the RV industry, someone who's contributed and fundamentally shaped how dealerships approach service efficiency and performance. Gary Enhart is not only a seasoned RV expert with decades of on-hand experience, but also a visionary behind the concept of RECT, repair event cycle time, a metric that has become the gold standard for measuring and improving service department performance. From his time leading innovations at major OEMs while at Cummins and Owens Generators, to his longtime standing involvement in dealer and industry associations, Gary has been at the forefront of innovation, always pushing for smarter processes and better outcomes for most dealerships and customers. But beyond the metrics, Gary is a passionate advocate for dealers, distributors, and OEMs. He understands the daily challenges they face because he's spent years working alongside them, listening, learning, and helping them to succeed. Today, he's joining us to share his story behind RECT, how it evolved, and why it matters now more than ever, especially in the market where customer experience and operational efficiencies are make or break for dealers today. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Gary Enhart, RV industry leader, innovator, and the original RECT disruptor. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Diana and Jeremy. It's great to be with you today.
Awesome. So let's kind of set the stage on some things. So to start off, who is Gary Enhart?
Well, I've been in the RV industry, associated with the RV industry for a long time, since the late 1970s, and worked for just a couple of different companies, Onan, which was purchased by Cummins in 1986. And then I'm a member of the Boomerang Club, in that I left Onan or Cummins for a period of time, about 9 years, and went into the pump business. And one of the 3 divisions under the parent company was SureFlow. So I got involved back in the RV industry with SureFlow, and then was hired back by Cummins in 2000, and retired from there about 3.5 years ago. So started at Onan when I was right out of high school. Started working in the factory. Was lucky enough to both have some operations background, and also got involved in manufacturing engineering. So I spent a lot of time out in the plant. Had a couple of stints in the aftermarket business in the mid 80s, and then again in 2002 to 2005. And so that's where I got my love for the service business, which is always challenging, as everybody knows. And joined the board of RVIA when Richard Kuhn, who was a coworker of mine, left to become president of RVIA. And I've been on the board since 2005, and including serving, a number of the different offices, secretary, treasurer, first and second vice chairman, and then 2018 to 2020, I served as chairman of RVIA, and helped us manage our way through the first part of the pandemic.
Wow, that is super impressive, and obviously lots of years, lots of experience. So through all those years, you actually wore a lot of hats, different positions, I think different companies. What was the most pivotal roles or moments that shaped your perspective on dealership operations?
Well, when Onan, which at the time I joined, which was in 1972, and I started working out in the factory, as I mentioned earlier. Onan was a subsidiary of Studebaker Worthington, which was a South Bend headquartered business. Some may remember that name. Obviously, everybody's heard of Studebaker, but Worthington was a pump company. And I was lucky enough, although I spent some time in operations and in the service business, I had some good mentors, and have primarily been in sales and marketing for most of my career, and got involved in the RV business directly in 1976 in what we had at the time at Onan was called the OEM group. And so we had a significant presence in the business then, had a rich history of providing good product. We were the first to get into the generator business with regards to RVs back in the 60s. And then was lucky enough, having worked there and learned a lot, and then left and got some additional experience, and came back to be able to run what, in my opinion, was the best business, the funnest business at Cummins, and was able to do it for almost 20 years.
Awesome. So before RECT was a thing, what problems were you seeing in service departments that sparked the idea?
Well, I always worked closely with the distributors that we had, both Onan and Cummins. And of course, Cummins is a large company, was a lot larger than Onan. I think when they purchased Onan, Onan had sales of about 500 million. And today Cummins is 35 billion. probably 79,000 employees, so it was much larger. And I enjoyed working with distribution, and always remembering, which is true in the RV business especially, that the front line, the consumer-facing part of the business and the industry is the dealers. And so we need to support them in everything we do, try and make life as easy as we can for them. And thankfully, from an aftermarket support standpoint, it was relatively easy to do at Onan and Cummins, because they had a rich history of parts documentation and 3D diagrams. It was easy to look up a part and acquire it relatively quickly. And so as I noticed, both when I was working in the early 70s and when I moved to Elkhart and moved to South Bend and lived in that area in the late 80s, early 90s, that it wasn't true with the RV industry. And then as I'll address here in a little bit, under the birth of RECT, saw an opportunity to help out there and jumped right in.
Awesome. And I think a little fun fact to throw in is when Gary and I were out in Elkhart back in April, and we were driving around, and we went and by his old house, and I believe Lou Holtz was one of your almost a neighbor of you back in your neighborhood back in the day, the former obviously legendary coach of Notre Dame.
Yeah, Lou lived a few blocks away, and I take my kids over there trick-or-treating to his house. And he, if you remember, so I'm based out of Minneapolis, and Jeremy's in Minnesota as well, as is Diana. Lou, before he went to Notre Dame, he was the coach of the Minnesota Gophers, University of Minnesota Gophers. And so it was interesting to see his transition. He had in his contract here that if he'd be coach here for a long time unless Notre Dame called, and of course they did.
Little fun fact there. So yeah, let's kind of get into what we call the birth of RECT. So for those newer to the industry, or maybe just don't look into things with service and that, so what exactly is RECT, and how do you define repair event cycle time?
So RECT is an acronym and a process that Cummins has used in our service facilities for quite a while, at least well, probably a couple of decades. And it is the definition of it is, and the objective is to get a customer into the service operation and back out with a successful repair as quickly as possible. And you can imagine how important that is in the Class 8 on-highway truck business. So that's what Cummins, one of the things Cummins focused on. And as we were working through the Six Sigma process, or the project, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, that seemed like the right measure for us as an industry, something that is relatively simple to understand and something that everybody could wrap their brains around and start focusing on. Has a lot of different inputs and outputs, but it's a good thing to focus on a process.
Exactly. Especially, I think some of the, we talk about Minnesota, we have some short seasons sometimes, especially camping. You don't want your camper at the local dealership for very long. So if they can get it in and out back to the customer, that definitely helps out everybody on there. So what was the initial reaction when you guys first kind of introduced the concept of RECT?
So let me back up to how the project got launched. So it was late 2016. We were in Louisville, Kentucky at the annual trade show. And there was a meeting that was prearranged. It was, and Brian Wilkins was the chairman of RVDA. We had come out of the, we were fully out of the Great Recession that wasn't so great. And we still had issues with regards to aftermarket support in the industry, even though we had some initiatives back in 2006 to 2008 and 9 called the Committees on Excellence, that we were trying to wrap our arms around this. So we were all in the boardroom in the upstairs of the convention center, and there was more than just our two boards there, RVI and RVDA. All of the leaders from the OEMs were there, represented, and all of the leaders from the major suppliers were there. We were talking about, so the ask by Brian Wilkins is, we need to improve in this area. We need to refocus on it. So what can we do to do that? So one of the guys that was sitting on the other end of this long table, a friend of mine, fellow board member, Bill Rogers, Bill Rogers probably from NTP Stag. And Bill had worked for General Electric, and he was involved in Six Sigma for a couple of years. He held a position called a black belt, where he did nothing but work on process improvement things at GE. And so Bill raises his hand and says, hey, I think in order to get our arms around this and figure out what's going on, we need to look at some data. We need to get some data, look at it, analyze it, and then improve the process. So Bill says, Gary's company uses Six Sigma. And I was sitting down on the other end of this long, large boardroom. There were probably 30 of us in there. And all the eyes turned to me and trained on me. And as to, what was I going to say? And I said, even though I'm a sales and marketing guy, I don't like projects like this necessarily. I said, I'll tell you what, I said, I will sponsor this project. I'll help out, try and determine what's going on. So what was different between this and every other initiative that we had ever tried with regards to improving things in the aftermarket support side of the business, service support, this time we got data. So we got 1,000 work orders from 20 dealers, gave us 50 work orders each, and we analyzed the data. And in summary, well, first of all, we met every week, almost every week for 6 months. We had a good cross-functional group of key dealers, had all the major suppliers involved, all the OEMs involved, and we had a good, lively discussion. It was very frank, open, and honest. And what the outcome was, what we determined was that if we could get access to parts, if the dealers could get access to parts, either had them in stock or could get them quickly through whatever means, that we could get a customer in and out in about 4 days. If there were issues identifying what the part was, because we had to send pictures, and the dealer had to send pictures to the OEM, or had other issues, it would take over 20 days. And so, and we had process maps that we went through. We had inputs and outputs. We identified every possible thing that could impact a service event. And, we have been working since then on how to improve our ECT. We have made some progress. There's still a long way to go, but, it is something that is not going away. A few years ago, I think about 3 years afterwards, Phil came up to me Phil Ingrassia at the dealer convention and said to me, he says, Gary, he says, we have something that we can all agree on as an industry. And he says, I am glad that this isn't going away. It's only going to get better. And so each one of us in the industry, including, all of us stakeholders. So the OEMs, the suppliers, the dealers, the wholesalers, we can all play a part in taking better care of our customers, and we're all on our own journey. But I will say that we're all focused on this in some way, shape, or form. There are things going on, and certainly the DMS providers play a huge role in. We're working with Jeremy and I have traveled to a number of OEMs. We're working with them to try and get additional integrations, and I came from a very large company. So Cummins parts business globally is well in excess of $3 billion. So it gets a lot of attention. We're moving data, we're moving price files all the time, every week. And we just need to get to that same place in the RV industry as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been a help, obviously, opening up some doors with that, and kind of goes into a little bit. We talked about some of the integrations and new tools, but since RECT evolved, what trends or pressures have make it more relevant today? Do you think you're seeing it more from the OEMs now, or really, obviously you talked about with Cummins and having a $3 billion business, there's a lot of eyes that want to be on that, but are we starting to see that with some of the RV or distributors out there?
Yes, we are. The OEMs have all been supportive. So after the project was done, we had a road show. So I went around to all the OEMs in Elkhart and all the various places, and we had met with their senior management. Talked to them about the results of the project, got into some detail. And I'll never forget, Pete Legal with his management team. And when we were done, he said, guys, now we've been into this for a few years. He said, guys, we gotta get better at this. So, whatever you need to do, we got to get better. And, the same was true with Bob Martin and the folks at Thor, and Mike Happy and the folks at the Winnebago operations, the various operations they have. And in general, everybody has been focused on it. So It's been very helpful. Sometimes the progress hasn't been as quick as we would all like, but you know, in the case of Thor, for instance, their purchase of Part Finder. Any of you that went to the Elkhart Dealer Days saw that Tom Utterback and others are there, and they're integrating their businesses into that, as well as some of the other existing stuff that they've had long term. But all of that is very helpful. And the fact that we are working closely together as an industry to get all these pieces kind of integrated so that we can provide a better customer experience is primary to our future growth as an industry.
Yeah, I think you hit on the head. Obviously, getting kind of the, you know, the heads of all the companies, and you kind of hit, you know, with Thor and Forest River and Winnebago, kind of, you know, the big three, I like to call them. And then a lot of other ones will see that. So kind of getting it from the top and having them push down to the different brands is definitely going to help. RV Part Finder you brought up, obviously we have an integration with them. It just makes it easier and faster to find parts, to get them on a repair order or a purchase order, and other tools with that. So going beyond just the numbers, what hidden challenges does it uncover for dealers when they're starting to track RECT seriously?
Yeah, well, one thing that the dealers that I've worked closely with have mentioned to me, and I'll relate a story here in a minute, but is that those that have focused on the measure and spent more time and focused more on the fixed operations side of their business have found success. So what I like to say is that gets measured can be improved. And, you know, I saw that in the Cummins operations. So the Cummins distributorships, they're all owned by Cummins now, but at one point they were independently owned, or there was a joint venture in each of them. And they had a scorecard. So, and the scorecard, which was outlined by the factory, what they wanted the distributors to do and focus on, they lived and died by that. If your scorecard had too much yellow and red on it, you weren't going to be the distributor principal very long. And so that gets focused on and measured can be improved. And I think that you know, I have seen that in a number of different dealerships. I was at a meeting last year, and Nathan Hart and Ryan Horsey, we were getting ready to start. It was an executive meeting between RVIA and RVDA. And they were talking in aside conversations with me about how, since they started focusing on RECT measures and the inputs that caused them to be either better and worse in their operations, how much improvement they had seen. And like 30–40% reduction in process time, RECT process time, getting customers in and out. And I was, you know, encouraged by that. And as I've talked to dealers individually about this, about, you know, what you need to do to stay focused on it and improve, I've gotten feedback that when they do, it pays off, and it helps with the bottom line. Obviously, the more customers you can get in and out of your operations quickly, the more service dollars you're going to generate.
Yeah, and I think it makes happier customers. And I think with everything is when we live in Google reviews and different reviews, if you're making your customers happy and getting them, you know, in and out really fast, and obviously tracking that, that's going to create more positive 5-star reviews. People are going to look at that dealership and want to bring, even if they didn't buy that unit from them, will probably want to go there and have service work, you know, as they're going through, especially if you're traveling, you know, wherever. You're going to look for, if there's something wrong with your unit, you need to find some place to do it. So a lot of people will first go and look at those reviews. So let's kind of segment into some real world applications. So what would you say to dealers who feel overwhelmed by the data or resistant to change, especially in the fixed ops?
Well, one of the things that's important, you know, if you're overwhelmed by the data, I would suggest getting with your DMS provider. One of the things that we're going to be working on, I've got a meeting tomorrow with Craig Kirby and Phil Ingracia to talk about what we're going to focus on here for the next year, is the more consistent of a process that you and other dealers can have relative to inputting your data into the work order, the better off you're going to be. Because if you have multiple service writers or whoever puts the data in doing it differently, it will skew your results. And the other thing is, I would look at the relative change. When we started out in this, some of the numbers look pretty ugly, and some from other industries would probably look at them and still say they're ugly. But in terms of where we were at and where we are today, we have seen fairly significant improvement. And to the extent that you can, I say grab a data geek out of your operation. There's one in every operation, somebody who looks at the data, has passion for trying to improve a service operation. Give them some support, analyze that, get to know the numbers, make standing agenda items on any of your staff meetings up to the upper level, and talk about this stuff and ask for input from the technicians and everybody else as to how you as an operation can do better.
Yeah, I think you hit it. And I think, as I said, digging in, not doing shortcuts. I've heard some stories of certain dealers, not one in particular, but like, instead of checking them in originally and getting them in the system to start the clock for, say, RECT, they would just handwrite the parts they need to order and then order the parts. And then once the parts come in and then they check them in, that's when they start the clock. But that's not really the entire RECT. So you can't get a true gauge of what you're doing. Because I think right now the idea is, whatever your number is, if it's 10 days, 50 days, we want to start decreasing that number through different systems that you can, put in place within your dealership. How do you recommend to dealers to start tackling high RECT numbers, or where should they look first?
Well, one of the largest impediments to good RECT numbers are acquiring parts. So having daily team meetings, huddles, you don't have to sit down, you don't have to make it can just be a stand-up meeting, but getting together and coordinating one with another in your operations will be very helpful. I've, some of the local dealers here that I spend a lot of time at are that they do that, and it gets down to the details. And so you can talk about, individual customers' units that may have nagging problems relative to whatever it might be, either a component you're trying to acquire from a OEM or supplier, but get down into the details and, expedite parts, do everything you can, make sure that you're focused on the details.
Perfect. So what are the most common bottlenecks you've seen in the service cycle while obviously visiting some dealerships?
I would say the biggest issues are with parts acquisition, and then the communication piece. One of the things that I saw that I thought was really important, and I think I've talked to other dealers about it as well, is when you're engaging with a service writers, engaging with an end customer, especially on the first couple of visits, there are often some issues. They may be operational, where the customer, you go over the unit with them when they pick it up, but it's hard to remember all the information. So in terms of triaging issues, there are some that if you have somebody that goes out to the unit before it gets checked in with a service writer, and provides information on how to work a certain thing, or can fix some of those, take some off of the punch list, that's a helpful and best practice that has worked effectively for many dealers.
Perfect. So we're going to kind of segment here just quickly. So obviously, we'll talk a little bit about, we're on a Lightspeed one here. So we have a lot of places that dealers can go look for their own reporting. We have Lightspeed industry benchmarks that they can subscribe to and see their stats as well as national stats with that. But one thing that we do post every single month on our corporate website. So I'm just going to show the lightspeeddms.com. And all you need to do is simply go under resources and go under Lightspeed data services. And we have lots of really cool data on here that is available. It's all aggregate. It's just by month. So kind of starting at the top is we do publish same store sales. So obviously we're talking mainly RV, but if you want to see how our marine dealers are doing or how our powersport dealers are doing, you can look at same store sales, which basically looks at sales from the previous month from the previous year to see if they're up or down. And we do look at parts, service, sales, and then overall. But then we get into what we talked about here is a lot of is the RECT. So you can quickly download this. So we do update this every single month on about the 10th. That'll get the new numbers. So what this will look at is, again, like Gary kind of talked about, is, it's the average number of days between the repair order is opened until it's cashiered. So the day they drop it off to the day the customer picks it up. So this is looking at August data. So obviously we'll be coming up here in a week or so. We'll have September. So we look at total RECT, and that includes both customer pay and then warranty. So you can definitely break this out and look at the differences. But the top one will look at the averages of everything on there. And we will see a lot of zeros on here. And typically, even when we're going down to -7, we had several days here. That's really dropping an extra day from the previous year. But we always look this as a baseline. So I would challenge each store that's out there. Where are you at today on these things? And the idea is, can we get them from 16 to 15 to 14 on that? So again, these are all available to anybody. This is our public website. So again, if you go to our website under resources, Lightspeed data services, there's some other cool reports in here. So you can kind of look at new units in stock. So you can kind of see across our network, are they what percentages are 26s, 25, 24s, 23s, and older. And then we also look at the number of parts searched through our system. So Gary talked about is one of the, I guess, bottlenecks overall is getting those parts ordered, making sure the parts come in, getting them checked in, getting them over to service in a timely fashion. This will show how many parts are actually looked up. Lightspeed has its own built-in locator, which makes it super easy for dealers to look for parts they might not have in stock. So most of every major distributor, we are getting their warehouse availability, so you don't have to go and look anywhere else other than Lightspeed. Or if you're a multi-store dealer and you have other locations, you can quickly see stock of your other locations, and you can also see stock of other Lightspeed dealers. So like, again, there's a unit you really need to get out the door, maybe it's a lemon law, whatever it is, you can look to try to source that part from somebody else on there. So hold on here, I'm just going to stop sharing. So we'll kind of lead into the last couple questions here as we're kind of starting to wrap up on here. So kind of like that. So looking ahead, so what do you see coming next in fixed ops, especially as technology and customer expectations evolve?
So there are a number of projects that we have ongoing right now, and we're starting to see significant progress in those. And so OEMs are working on part number consolidation. As the dealers know, there are parts out there that have 160 part numbers assigned to the same part. And so the dealers are working on consolidating those. The other project we've got going on is parts naming conventions. So there will be a tool that'll be available and a place where the industry can go to ensure that they have the same name across the industry. And these are all kind of industry standard things that other industries do. So we're not really charting a new course. We're just trying to get caught up to where we need to be consistent with other industries. We're working on warranty process improvements. We'll continue with dealer training. And I think, we will probably see over time the use of AI in some of these programs to help us get to the point we need to be or want to be more quickly. So
Awesome. And that kind of rolls in a little bit. So let's just a couple of questions here. So you have this crystal ball. Where would you like RECT to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I'd like to see us have more of an automotive industry approach to parts support where we can easily identify the parts. One of the other things that we're working on is having a more structured, what I call a more structured bill of material, where the major components or the serviceable components that are put into an RV are the barcodes are scanned and tied to the VIN number. And that's something that's not too far off. There are some of the big three that are working on implementing new systems across their businesses, which will help with this, and others that are working in this direction as well. So I think we could get there, and all this focused on just trying to get information more quickly to the technicians. We'll see a lot more tablets being used as they're working on units. The other thing is I'd encourage dealers to get involved in RVDA's fixed ops. They've redone all the training modules, and I know many of the dealer folks out there have already gotten engaged, but I'd encourage them to do that. I think all that'll help. And then as I call the service people, across all of our industries, they are the unsung heroes. They're those that help keep our customers able to recreate in their RVs. And, they're really important. We need to pay a lot of attention to them, give them tools that make their job easier.
Awesome. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to every service manager or dealer owner watching this today?
Recognize, if you haven't already, recognize the importance of the service support, both to the profitability of your business and to retaining customers for life. The automotive business has long lived on what they call service support absorption. So they pay for much of the operations of their large facilities that they have by focusing in this area. And we as an industry and we as individuals need to do that as well.
Perfect. So last question. Anything you wish someone would have told you when you started thinking about RECT?
Be really patient, Gary, because this is, it never goes quite as fast as you'd like. A lot of, the RV industry has been doing things successfully for a long time. And so to change what they've been doing is oftentimes difficult and expensive, but it is necessary. And so, I'm glad that we as an industry have coalesced around these important activities, and that we're making progress. And like I said before, it's not going away. And it's the dealers can have a significant impact on the OEMs by focusing on this in your discussions with senior management or your territory guy or whoever. It's really important to our current and future success.
Awesome. And I think, yeah, I mean, change can be hard, but change is good. I think by having tools now to see what's going on, more tools to automate processes to speed this up, I think is gonna be great. Because again, I think you hit on the head is we're constantly chasing automotive. And they've been doing it well for a long time, but we're literally selling something that's very similar. It's a similar process on that, so we can adopt a lot of the processes. So we're not trying to recreate the wheel. We're just trying to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. So back to you, kind of, Diana. So that's the gist of our questions. So I guess, did we get any questions that anybody has?
We sure did. We had a couple of them, and you guys touched on this a little bit, but I think maybe you want to just dig into a little bit more. You know, with Thor having purchased the RV Parts Finder solution, like how do we think that's going to continue to really help move the RECT initiative forward? Like, how do we have think that impact's going to happen in the industry?
Well, RV Part Finder has had, they've been in business for quite a while, and they obviously focus on appliances and parts lookup and some historical perspective relative to fixing both current and older units. I know that I attended. I went in the booth. They had a large tent at the Thor facility, or at the Thor booth, and they're rewriting some of the code and bringing some enhancements to the tool. And I think it'll only get better. I think, as they refocus on the functionality of it, it's got a lot of good functionality, but anytime you update things, you can take a fresh look at it and what others are doing. Do things like, like Amazon. When you order something on Amazon, they pop up a window that says, you may also need these things. And so a lot of that functionality, I think, can be improved and will probably help with regards to identifying the part and then working with the wholesaler or an OEM to acquire it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great one too. And I know we've actually got a focused webinar coming up in December. I think it's on December 3rd that Maggie Stevens is doing, really talking about parts. And one function that we talk about, even Lightspeed, is just using the similar parts button that people aren't familiar with. It's like, but taking that even further, very specifically to the RV Parts Finder, where it helps them find the part that will work because they need it now. I mean, that's the biggest thing, they need it now. Yeah, no, it's great. Some of the other questions that came in too is people are really excited and interested in some of the data reports, Jeremy, that you shared. And people are just wondering if there is any reports within Lightspeed that help kind of with RECT. And I just know of a couple of them. I know there's like the 605 outstanding repair order, and I think it's the 606 outstanding repair order completed. And then we also have a days in shop RECT report. And I always tell people that, go out to your tech knowledge. So if you're in Lightspeed and you go to the help button, go to technology, type in RECT, there's a couple of articles out there that report you right to those reports and kind of some of the tips and pointers as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, obviously I would encourage dealers to get involved in 20 groups. I think they're fantastic. And a lot of that is looking at, one dealer versus another dealer, and they're really digging into the numbers. I think one of the most impactful reports is Lightspeed industry benchmarks that live in there, where you can, and RECT is its own separate report in there too, but it'll show you your actual numbers, but it will compare you to all the other RV dealers using Lightspeed. And we do segment by industry, so you're not getting compared to powersports or marine dealers on that. And that'll give you a true, baseline. That should be your goal. I mean, you should always have two goals. Is one, continuously to improve your own numbers, but you should want to be above the national average.
Yeah, no, those are good. And it kind of ties back even to Jeremy, what you're talking about is one of the question was they were wondering, like, the reports that are out on the Lightspeed public website, the one that Jeremy showed, are those the same as what's inside Lightspeed in the DMS? And they're actually different. I mean, the ones that are out on the public website, I would say, are a higher level detail. And if you're in Lightspeed and you've subscribed or purchased our like benchmark reporting, you get much more detailed reports.
Correct. Yeah. So the ones, like I said, the ones on the website are definitely higher level. We just like to obviously, as industry leaders in a lot of industries right now, we like to show baselines of where we're at. We're going to continue putting that in some publications, I think, moving forward. We do that in some already today, but it's a great way, especially, marine and RV and power sports, they're all so close to each other. So it's great to kind of compare, even sales. How is sales up? Are you up? Are you down? How is that compared to all of our other dealers? How is that compared to marine or our power sports? What's going on right now? So obviously we have a lot of headwinds out in the world right now. Everything from tariffs to whatever, interest rates and that affect a lot of things. But I think everybody needs to look at their own business and look at ways to engage better communication with their customers, use the tools out there. Another one we didn't talk about, Gary, is when the automotive is service tech video, having the ability to take a 30-second to a minute video of actually what's wrong with the RV and texting or emailing that to the customer, where again, it could be a couple $1,000 fix. Now I'm going to either leave a voice message or talk or send an email. And like, there's always questions. I think anybody is going to question that. But if I can see a video of what happened, that should actually help out approve that repair order much faster, because they actually have video proof of what's happening. So that's more of the technology we're taking that automotive has had for years and trying to instill and put it into the RV industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and we definitely have seen dealers, who are using our tech video have absolutely increased the amount of revenue they can drive through their service department. I mean, customer confidence is higher, they can upsell, and it's kind of like they're confident, like, yeah, go ahead and get that done now. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I believe one of our local Utah dealers in power sports uses it, and they, in the course of the last couple of months, have seen an increase of about 30% to their service department by using video. So it is very impactful. Again, it has to be from the top down. It has to be used, and I think that's one of the biggest key measures is as the owner or the manager of the department, there's a lot of great tools, but you have to instill that your techs and everybody else is using the tools to increase these numbers.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I said, Gary, what a wealth of knowledge. I know we've learned a ton today. And I said, even all the questions kind of come back to kind of a quote that you had said, that gets focused on can be measured and improved. I mean, it all comes back to that, the magic's in the details. So like focus on those details and figure out kind of what you need to improve. So appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Gary. Thanks, Jeremy, for hosting. And thank you everybody for attending. We hope to see you on one of our next webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.